The Boy at the Back of the Class, Chapter 15. The greatest idea in the world. That Thursday night, while Mum was at work, instead of doing my homework, I took my Tintin pencil case and my notebook and went and sat down by the window in the kitchen. I wanted to come up with a plan, just like Tom and Josie and Michael had done, and thought that if I sat there, maybe my brain would come up with something exciting all on its own. I have a desk in my room, but I like sitting in the kitchen more because then I can see the sky and the whole city too. Tom says it doesn't matter how big or small an apartment is. If it's on the top floor, it becomes a penthouse. That's kind of house that movie stars live in. I guess they must like sitting in kitchens and looking at skies and cities too. I waited a long time for my brain to think of something, but when Mum came home, she found me still sitting at the kitchen table, pressing the snowy and Captain Haddock button on my pencil case. I couldn't think of anything, not even after she came and sat with me to watch the sunset. I love watching the sunset with Mom. She calls it the magic hour because you can see colors you won't ever see again and birds that might fly away forever, swimming across the skies together. But I can only ever do it properly with my mom. I have tried to watch the sunset on my own and feel just as happy, but I can't seem to do it at all. It doesn't work. By dinner time, I still hadn't thought of anything, so I went straight to bed to see if my brain could think of things better when it was lying down. But I fell asleep instead and had a nightmare that was so scary it made me wake up. I dreamt of being on a piece of wood in the middle of a dark sea. At first it had been quiet, but then, to my right, a girl had begun to cry. She was about to be swallowed by a giant whale, and suddenly, on my left, my dad was shouting for help from a sinking boat. And no matter how hard I tried or how much I wanted to, I couldn't help the girl or stop my dad from disappearing into the water. If you have ever woken up after a nightmare when it's pitch black and so late that nothing in the world is awake, you will know it isn't nice at all. When I woke up, I couldn't hear anything or see anything, so for a moment I wasn't sure if I was awake or still in my nightmare. But then I heard one of the mice squeaking in the kitchen and I knew I was awake. That's the good thing about animals. They always let you know they are around, especially when they are hungry. And if they are around, then you know you are real and the world around you is real too. I was feeling hot and damp, so I got up and pulled back the covers to make sure I hadn't wet the bed. Luckily, I hadn't. I hate wetting the bed. I used to do it all the time after Dad died, but then, when I turned 7, something happened and I stopped doing it. Maybe when you turn 7, your body knows you have become too old to wet the bed anymore. I didn't want to lie back down in case I had the nightmare again, so I tiptoed into the kitchen to get a glass of water and see the mice. Mom says that years ago an old woman who bred all sorts of exotic animals used to live in our apartment. That could be why we found a small nest of bright yellow snakes in our kitchen wall last summer, or why we have 2 mice living with us. But I don't mind. For just a tiny piece of food, they can become your friends for life. They disappear if they don't like you. So you always know if they are going to be your friends right from the start. And it's always good to know from the start because it saves you from wasting your best cheese. After I got a drink of water, I went back to my room, but I was still too scared to go back to sleep. So I sat on the floor and got one of my favorite Tintin comics out from underneath my bed. It was the one about a rich old opera singer who comes to stay with Captain Haddock even though he really doesn't want her to, and whose green diamonds get stolen. I couldn't really concentrate because all I could think about was Emmett and how his sister Sarah was in the sea. But then, just as I was thinking how the rich old opera singer looked like a queen except with much a bigger nose, it suddenly happened. I had an idea, and it was about It was without a doubt quite possibly the greatest idea in the world. It leaped right into my head, just like a giant frog, and jumped around until I knew it had to work. It just had to. You can always tell when you have the greatest idea in the world because it appears from nowhere. Ordinary ideas take an awfully long time to become an idea because they're just normal. So your brain can't get excited about them and has to make them slowly, like thousands of boring bread rolls being baked in an extra slow oven. But when an idea is truly great, it doesn't take any time at all. It just suddenly appears and make your eyes go wide and your brain feel as if it just been pushed out of bed. Jumping to my feet, I got my exercise book and drew out my plan. This is what the greatest idea in the world looked like. When I had finished, I started at it and went over it again and again in my head. I knew right away that it would work, but only if Tom and Josie and Michael helped and kept it all a secret. I got back into bed and lay there, wishing for the morning to come, because as soon as it did, I was going to put the greatest idea in the world into action and help Emmett find his family. I knew it was going to be the most exciting thing any of us had ever done, and that there was a chance it might get us into trouble too. What I didn't know was what I didn't know was just how dangerous an adventure it was going to be, and quite how much trouble it was going to get us in.